Nikki says, he says I have expectations and that's preventing me from being happy with him. Is there such a thing as having no expectations? Absolutely, right? And it's one of those things where, so it depends on what you mean by expectations. If you mean expectations like what we talk about, right? Expectations like you expect that a guy is going to do all these things, and if he doesn't, then, you're like, why didn't you do these things that I wanted you to do or whatever, right? That's one kind of expectation. Another kind of expectation is that you know what it is that you want and that you're not going to settle for less, right? So the first kind of expectation is, I want you to do this, and usually what this looks like is women will be like, why didn't you pull out my chair? Why didn't you open the door for me? Why didn't you, whatever, right? Which is a very painful way to connect with a guy, right? And if you have expectations around that, right? Or like sometimes women will have expectations around texting where they'll send a text to a guy and they'll be like, hi. And the guy's like, hi, back. And the woman's like, why isn't he texting me more often, right? And it's like, because he doesn't know, right? Because you sent him a hi, right? And so if you want something different, you have to communicate what it is that you want. And if you have expectations, you have to figure out whether they're expectations or whether they're standards, right? Is this something where you're nitpicking over little things, or is it something where you have communicated what it is that you want, you know what it is that you want, you're communicating what it is that you want, and he's deciding to not live up to those standards that you have, right? So absolutely, you can have no standards, right? Or no expectations, right? And you'll be a lot happier when you have no expectations, because what will end up happening is people won't disappoint you if you have no expectations, right? And it's pretty difficult to not have any expectations at all. However, you'll experience a much more enjoyable life with no expectations, but having high standards, right? If so, for instance, let's say that you go out on a date with a guy and you have an expectation that he's going to pay for dinner, right? And then he doesn't pay for dinner. Well, you expected him to pay for dinner. And so now you're angry that he didn't because he's not living up to your expectations. Whereas if you have no expectations, but you have standards, and he doesn't pay for your dinner, but your standard is that you want to have a man who's a provider and who pays for your dinners and who treats you that way, right? And he doesn't do that. It means that you're not upset, right? But what it means is that he's not living up to your standards. You can still be happy, you can still have a good time, and you're still enjoying yourself, but he's not living up to your standards, and that's okay, because not everybody's going to live up to your standards. And instead, you're going to find somebody else who does live up to your standards. You're going to communicate what it is that you want, and there's nothing wrong with what he did by not paying for your dinner, right? We live in the world of strong, independent feminist women. And so it's becoming more and more expected, especially in the West and the United States, more so than anywhere else, that you will pay for your own dinner, right? Because you're a strong, independent woman and you don't need no man for nothing, right? And if you run into a guy who feels that way about kind of the world, or he doesn't really have a lot of money, or he's been around a lot of kind of feminist women who are offended by a guy paying for their meals, then he might expect that you're going to pay for your own side of your meal, right? And so you have to decide whether it's something that controls you or whether it's something that doesn't control you, and you let it kind of wash over you and you just let it pass you by. And that's kind of the difference between standards and expectations, right? And it's maybe that wasn't the best articulated, but I hope you kind of get what I'm talking about here.